Today's going to be a history lesson on naked shorting. It's going to deep dive into how our markets truly operate, what goes on behind closed doors, and we're going to start with a very nice video about Refco. So all the links will be in the description below, full outline if you want to bounce around and look at different sections. I'm completely cool with that. Watch the video, listen to it, and then we'll recoup after.
Back between 2001 and 2003, Refco was directly involved in a naked short selling scandal associated with Sedona Corporation. The DOJ has arrest warrants out for two of the primary characters in that from RICO advisors, and they bribed two brokers to manipulate the stock of Sedona. And under audio recordings, they have those brokers working at Refco Securities. So the SEC has been looking at Refco Securities since 2001. And nobody can understand why, if the SEC has audio recordings and the DOJ has audio recordings of Refco participating in naked short selling for an offshore hedge fund in the manipulation of Sedona, why they don't know and why they aren't concerned about this particular bad debt.
So you are concerned then that there's something more to this than just the transfer of losses from the likes of the company's former CEO to a hedge fund, a little-known hedge fund, that there's something else larger going on here, even though that remains unproved and to a certain extent uncharged.
Yeah, you know, the way that we've looked at it and analyzed it, what kind of bad debt can you have since 1998 that you can't write off? And, you know, if Refco was going through this IPO and they've been going through all this process, you would think that they would have been able to write off this debt after all these years. My biggest complaint is that the SEC has been negotiating a settlement with Refco for going on 3 or 4 years that we can tell, and that the SEC at the same time lets this company go public when it's the executives in these particular corporate areas that the Refco was accused of using for stock manipulation. The SEC never should have let this company go public in the first place, and they should have addressed the fraud that was associated with this company several years ago.
Now, David, you have leveled some pretty wide-ranging charges about the financial system in America itself with respect to abuses in the naked short selling arena. And there have been those in the regulatory community who have described you as, you know, a little bit cranky, a little bit off the mark with your allegations about how widespread some of this behavior is. What would you say to that?
Prove it. All I ask you to do is settle all the trades, and I look at the regulation SHL threshold security list, and you have companies that are on it for 200 consecutive days. We've received from the Securities and Exchange Commission under subpoena evidence that the SEC had gathered on their own that had 250-day trade that failed by some of our top institutions. And they sold the shares at $11, and they purchased it back in a buy-in 250 trade days later at 50 cents. The company went under, and there's evidence all over the place of these allegations being true. The SEC is just not enforcing it. We've asked Congress to step in and investigate the SEC's role in this, and Congress isn't stepping in. It is the security side that seems to have these problems. It is the security side that the SEC has been looking at and the Department of Justice has been looking at. But it is also Bennett and Maggio that they were looking at, and
You're talking about Santo, Maggio, Phil Bennett, who were the principals in the firm. Yeah,
exactly. And the SEC, it was Refco that put out a press release saying that they were negotiating a $5 million settlement, and Mr. Maggio was going to get a 1-year suspension from supervising the corporation because of his participation in stock manipulation. And how do you have people that you're negotiating stock manipulation settlements for go out and take a company public? I don't understand it. And I think that there's enough evidence. You know, I look at regulation SHO and the grandfather clause, and where have you ever heard of a grandfather clause in the securities market? You know, we have plenty of regulations that say that you have to settle trades promptly for the protection of the industry. I'd like to know where this bad debt comes from. I believe it personally is coming from unsettled trades, and that's why they couldn't write it off. All right. And if it truly is, you know, $430 million worth of unsettled trades today, mark to market, what was it back in 1998 when they actually sold the trades?
So clearly, as you can see, this was a huge inside job. The SEC has been investigating this for over 4 or 5 years. And from 1999 to 2005, CEO Philip Bennett and half owner of Refco pleaded guilty to 20 federal counts, including conspiracy, securities fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, making false statements to auditors and the SEC. Okay, he hid hundreds of millions of dollars in losses by reporting them as debt owed to Refco by Refco Group Holdings. So Bennett juggled the books to make it appear those huge losses were actually owed to Refco by a customer, and when the new year started, the books were juggled again. So he executed more than 100 million in these frauds, and then the house of cards toppled over when they got bought out. So really, really nasty. The SEC knew this. They had audio filings. They let this happen. We saw the directors had to forfeit $39 million that they were stealing from people. Just absolutely nuts. Here is David Patch's letter to the SEC. I really recommend you read it. It's about 3 pages. I'm not going to go into it all, but he talks about the things that we've mentioned in the past, and also what really stood out to me: how much fraud are you willing to accept for liquidity? Commentary on former SEC Commissioner William Donaldson in the 2004 speech to the Federal Reserve. How much fraud are you willing to accept for liquidity? How much can we buy you out for, is what they're basically saying. Here's something that's really interesting. Hedge funds to cancer patients die. Dendrion Corp, they are a Washington-based biotech company that researches treatments for cancer, something with monoclonal antibodies, but really interesting. Another company here suffering from pulmonary blood diseases too, so pulmonology and hepatology. Basically, pirfenidone is one of their drugs here that helps treatment in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And again, does not matter. When we scroll down, we see this insane amount of FTDs just driving the share price down from $35 all the way under 15. We see that here, and as well as in this other company, Dendrion. Look at the amount of FTDs here in 2007. Absolutely nuts. Over a $20+ stock driven down under $5. Hedge funds to U.S. soldiers. I need a MAYBACH so you can all die too. So take a Mercedes, stir a couple $100,000, and you get a car called a MAYBACH. Again, this was 2008, so please understand the time of the article. But here's a Humvee. Here's an IED, and obviously there are casualties as a result of those IEDs. Fortunately, there's a company in South Carolina called Force Protection Inc. They manufacture mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, or MRAP vehicles. Under their skin, MRAPs have an ability to deflect bomb blasts, makes them nearly impervious to IEDs. Last time I checked, June of 2008, there have been 300 IED attacks in Iraq against MRAPs, and only 1 death, which was at the explosion caused the vehicle to roll over, which killed a soldier in a gun turret. So basically, there's been no deaths from the actual bombs or the blast, proving that their technology or their company is successful. So the Department of Defense placed a huge order for them. Force Protection's revenue soared, and they're nicely profitable, as you could see by the income statement. Very, very nice numbers here in September of 2008. Same with the net income. Very nice. Stock price goes up. Right, we see from under $15 here, and it goes all the way up to almost 25. Natural move would be to do a secondary or to sell more stock into the public market, which would dilute but also raise capital so they could expand their production, keep up with the DoD demand. However, someone started naked shorting, as you could see here, as the stock moves up to 30 plus. Crazy amount of FTDs all the way from 05 2008, driving that share price down under $5. So Force Protection, thus not able to complete a secondary, remains unable to meet DoD's demands. Thus, more of these will be sent home from Iraq, so that the soft hedge funds guys can have more of these. So this is no joke, guys. This is serious. I mean, they don't care who it is. You could be doing, the greater good. You could be doing cancer research or, helping protect soldiers from roadside bombs. It does not matter. These are low-life scumbag people who will sell their family out. They would much rather lose everything than to see you win, than to see other people beat them at their own game. They are sick and twisted and just money-hungry, sick individuals. And this is real. This is the world. And this goes back to 2008. How old were many of you guys in 2008? Think about it. Foul play among UAL shorts. Absolutely. Back in 2002, American Airlines actually filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The stock within the past year dropped from 20 to 2. And again, yes, they were victim of naked short selling. Okay. And what we saw here was that they were looking at a surge of shorts activity, especially when the price in the mid 1999 was as high as $80 a share. Okay, now such clearinghouses and brokers and hedge funds were all in on this, basically delaying of delivery for the shares, which essentially is stock settlement. We know that it goes way past the 3-day period. And when this investigation was launched, we saw that there was over 24 million out of the 56.9 million outstanding shares now in the hands of shorts, plus many more unreported that were shorted through ECNs or electronic communication networks, which were computer-based trading systems. Okay, so again, there were so many ways that they could delay delivery by selling them short. But even with these ECNs, they were computer generated. They're very difficult to track or police, and they don't actually have to follow the New York Stock Exchange regulations. So to deliver those shares and basically, conduct that after 3 days was typical protocol. But what we saw is usually allowed by the clearinghouses. They were have extensions and they would actually work with them. And it was this whole big operation, which seems very similar to AMC and GameStop. Okay. And here we see the clearinghouse and at the big investment banks are supposed to have control and make sure that they actually turn in them on time. But what they did is they usually look the other way, give the shorts more time. Okay. And this is a violation of the board rules. And we know this. But if we scroll down, the reason why is because it's hundreds of millions of dollars involved, right? Okay, so they don't always follow up on the rule violations because the funds provide a rich source of business. So they keep putting more pressure on UAL to file bankruptcy by driving the stock down, mainly by shorting the shares relentlessly. Should bankruptcy occur, UAL's stock will continue to drop and the shorts will scoop them up at only several cents on the share.
Well, a short sale is when you borrow the shares, sell them immediately. You make your money when the price declines. A naked short occurs when you don't really borrow. You go to your prime brokerage firm, you say, set up this short sale. He doesn't borrow the shares. Part of it is naked. Now, this has caused a lot of controversy. Patrick Byrne of Overstock.com has basically started a jihad against the prime brokerages, the big Wall Street firms that do this naked shorting, as well as the hedge funds that are engaging in it as well. Right now, he apparently is getting a fair hearing from Chris Cox. Yesterday, speaking before the Senate Banking Committee, Cox basically said, listen, we are looking at the issue of naked shorting, examining it as part of our broad examination of hedge funds. Right. I think this is really interesting. Listen, Cox stopped short of saying he's going to charge someone with a violation. And by the way, this is a very legal, very gray area in the SEC's
naked shorting.
Yeah, I mean, no one really knows just where it sits as far as the illegality of it. However, he did say he's going to give it a fair hearing, and he may do some rulemaking on this later on. And I think that's a big victory for Patrick Byrne, because the more this thing gets aired, the more it becomes a politically divisive issue. Robert Bennett, the senator from Utah, basically put Cox's feet to the fire during the hearing yesterday. And Patrick Byrne, his company is located in Utah. And what really surprises me is just how politically active Patrick Byrne and some of these companies that are targeted by naked short sellers have become. That in a Senate hearing, that naked short selling becomes one of the main issues. Now, what's also kind of forcing the SEC on this is a lawsuit, but ironically by hedge funds. A lot of hedge funds saying they're paying the full freight for a full short position, but it's actually part of it is a naked short. So there were two lawsuits.
But not at their behest. It's the brokerages. They're
suing the brokerages because they're saying the brokerages that are setting up this short sale are only setting up a partial short sale. Yeah. So this is going to be more controversy in the weeks to come.
From nuts and bolts, though, Charlie, don't you have a back office settlement failure? I mean, the T+3 settlement, don't you have a fail then? And how did they keep the book square? That's
a great question. Nobody really knows. And that's why the SEC has to come in and at least provide some guidance. I think they should do a white paper on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of you investors are relatively new to this market, and that's completely okay, but just know that these bans or restrictions or manipulations in the market, they have been around for a very long time. And we see Bank of America, Merrill Lynch cracks down on risky securities with banning penny stocks. So again, very similar to the AMC and GameStop. And it was Nokia, Express, Naked, CTRM, Sundial. There are many different stocks that were actually paused or restricted. And we saw that any penny stock under $5 a share or under 300 million in market cap was subject to a regulatory review because they claimed that they could easily be manipulated for fraudulent purposes and other things of that nature. So essentially, Bank of America put themselves first. They were telling people that they had to get rid of them by a certain date. So he called up and they said the client doesn't want to do that. Now they're telling me he doesn't have to sell, but it could be hard to get rid of it down the road.
Clients who want to sell will experience a delay in execution because of the review. Again, anything under $5 a share, under 300 million in market cap, would be subject to a regulatory review. So again, they're just delaying that process. They're not really letting you get out, but they're also not letting you buy. So same thing we saw back in January in 2021. This has been going on for years. It's just that people are new in the markets and they don't understand how long this is going on, and how long this has actually been reported on. Now we're going to take a look into some more GTII penny stock related things. SEC charges convertible note dealer and Long Island based owners for fail to register. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Let's take a look. Great Neck, New York, two brothers, and they're charged for what? 82 different issuers they allegedly obtained from unregistered dealer activity. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Kurt Kramer, Mazuma, 1.4 million to settle the charges. Why? Because they had a pair of microcap companies fail to register them before they were resold to investors for sizable profits. And if we scroll down, 21 separate transactions. Okay, he purchased the shares at significant discount at prevailing market prices. Kurt and Mazuma resold the misappropriated shares to the public without any registration and sold for about $1 million profit. So what they did here was between January 2016 and 22, they purchased about 250 convertible notes from 150 microcap issuers and converted the notes into 35 billion new issued shares of stock at a large discount from market price. It then allegedly sold the new shares into the market at a significant profit. Neither Crown Bridge nor the Adduts were registered dealers with the SEC or associated with a registered dealer, as their activities required them to do so. These are the same charges, folks, the same exact town. Great Neck, New York, Great Neck, New York. Two brothers, same charge, same crime. And I mean, come on, this cannot get any closer to the source, guys. Do I have to spell it out for you? Taking a look at securities attorneys or OTC lawyers on Twitter. I definitely want you guys to keep updated here. They're going to be posting a lot about RICO charges and other things coming up with their events in the future. But one interesting thing that relates to my last video on GTII was they just granted our client VNUE motion to file counterclaims, which is essentially going after these guys. They said, hey, you victimized us, you mistreated us. Now we're going to go after you for RICO violations and other countermeasures. And what do we see? The same article from last video, right? Where the CEO wanted to step up. I'm trying to find it right here. So when we took these notes, we did so reluctantly because he had no other funding source. So that's what we talk about. They victimize people and target vulnerable companies. So now, they're no longer going to tolerate these predatory lenders profiting off our shareholders and hard work of our staff from last video directly. And what do we see now? They are taking proactive steps to fight back. And that's what I love. Now, why do I believe GTII is already sealed? Why do I believe this article is the icing on the cake? Well, very simple. There would be no reason that the FINRA has to report that the DTC or the Depository Trust and Clearing Corp is unable to process it. What this means is that they are blocking it. They're telling you no. No what? This is a company. The CEO should have no problem, no one standing in the way of him issuing a dividend to his shareholders. He is obligated and has every right to do so. Okay, they are taking the entire cost of it out of the DTC's hands. They are doing it all themselves. They are gathering all the data, all the information, and issuing it themselves as a company, which again, being proactive, they have the right to do so. Why else would they block them? Guys, this is not a joke. This is not to be funny, but when this stock runs, everyone around is going to say, what is this POS stock, this random penny stock that no one in the world has heard about? Why is it running? Well, because the FINRA and DTC knows that there is something behind the scenes. There is a clear discrepancy between the supply created and the supply circulating. There must be. There's no other reason or obligation that they would block a random penny stock company that's trading at 60 cents a share, that doesn't trade, has no volume, has no players involved in it, no one significant. It's no Citadels or BlackRocks or Cabals. It is a random penny stock that barely has 100,000 shares traded a day. AMC trades their daily volume in 1 minute candle on the first minute candle today. Okay, so please don't give me that crap that there's something wrong fundamentally. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing that's stopping them. The DTC knows that there is a huge discrepancy. They know that the prime is going to get blown up, or that they're going to have to take a couple $1 billion hit here, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to be involved with it, so they're just going to block it and push it away. What this tells me is, hey, you guys won. Great job on finding the blueprint on how to actually force stock settlement, but we're going to block you because we just don't want to deal with this headache right now. We have other fish to fry. And that's truly where I think we're at with GTII. I mean, we're seeing the crackdown. This was August 2nd. This was not only 4 weeks ago. We're seeing two brothers from the same town, the same charge, $9 million, 5 years bar. We're seeing the OTC lawyers are going after these guys. Companies are fighting back. We know VNUE already has a lawsuit against them. So this is perfect. Everything is coming to fruition. All we have to do is keep applying a little bit more pressure. Having an educated shareholder base is the single-handedly most important part of letting a stock run, especially, with this combined effort.
Last but certainly not least, I just want to show you the daily total U.S. Treasury trade fails. And on average, it's above, 20, 30 billion, but we even see it on some days get as high as over 50 billion. This is daily. Again, just showing you the same exact thing that's playing out right behind the scenes. No one really pays attention to, but that was the video for you guys. I hope you have enjoyed it. My goal here is to educate. I want to show you what has happened in the past and then tie it all together and see what's now currently happening in the present. So like I said, please share that link if you don't mind. Drop a comment, thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.